pretty good.
Yeah. Oh. Welcome to a week in the life of our small woodworking business. This week we worked on a display case and a cherry tabletop, and we wanted to show you the building process and the unexpected challenges that came along with it. So let's dive in. We started the day by preparing the display case for assembly.
How's the Q-tip taste?
Fresh air caught me.
To help us with the assembly, we used a domino joiner. While it is expensive, it more than made up for its cost by how much faster we were able to complete projects with it. With us being a two-person business, we have to save as much time as we can, which this tool is very helpful with. When gluing the domino slots, we have found using Q-tips as an easy way to spread the glue around. That is why you'll often see us with a container of them. It is also helpful for getting sawdust out of your ears, so it has multiple uses. We haven't put any glue on the rails yet because we like to do a dry fit first. That way you don't try gluing everything just to find out that the slots don't line up at all. Learn that one from experience. Now that the dry fit looks good, we can start gluing the rails to the panel. This is going to be on the back of the case. Speaking of dry fits, now that the back panel is clamped, we want to try dry fitting the carcass of the case together before gluing that up. This is only a little terrifying.
I got one of my legs. That was a terrifying noise.
It was.
Well, your left end is completely done.
Didn't quite get it. Just gonna. Alright. Alright, ready? Okay. We're good. Ready? Alright, I'm gonna lower. That's a little scary. Well, I consider that a successful dry fit. However, we now need to glue the rails and install the glass into the grooves, so we're not out of the woods yet. To help us with gluing the rails to the carcass, we use CA glue. This isn't a permanent hold, but it is helpful for acting as a clamp while the wood glue cures. I still recommend using actual clamps whenever you are able though. To support the glass and stop it from rattling or moving around, we like to use space balls. And no, I'm not referring to the movie. Look it up, it's an actual thing. We mostly use them for shaker-style doors for the same reason. The glass inside is 1/4 inch thick and tempered. This is a display case, so we wanted the glass to be strong. This did add some to the weight though. One of the main challenges with this case was figuring out how to assemble everything. We decided that fully assembling the sides first, and then installing the glass and rails between them would be the easiest way. This still was difficult. You'll see in a moment how it went. we're going to be grabbing that side and we're going to try to set it up on top of each of these dominoes. Press them down.
You got the longer reach than me. I'll let you put your side. Make sure the glass is lining up okay over there. You good?
Yeah. Getting all this action.
Over here.
It was a little scary. It took some time lining up the dominoes and the glass, but eventually it all came together nicely. This was one of those projects where having two people is very helpful. If you have a better way to assemble this thing, please share it with us in the comments because we are always trying to improve our process. At this point, I am attaching the casters to the case since the bottom shelf will be sitting on top of it. The toughest part of this build has been completed, so now I'm just working on the next steps. The bottom shelf needed to be trimmed down slightly to fit, so I cut off a sliver using the table saw. After that, I drilled pocket holes in the bottom shelf since that is how I'm attaching it to the rest of the case. Can't complain about a perfect fit. Now look at that.
Oh, darn.
Are you gonna be able to pocket hole this one with that shelf in there?
That is a question. So I got this guy in, but we realized that I probably should put the shelf that goes here first since I can access it from the back. So I have to pop this guy out again and do that. So thanks, Henry.
No problem.
Yeah, you're great. While this wasn't the biggest problem, it's never fun having to undo work that you have already done. But this type of stuff happens quite often in the shop, and I'm honestly just grateful that this mistake was very quick to fix. So now I have to prep the second shelf. The shelves that you'll see in the case both need their front corners notched out so that we can fit wiring in the corners. I tried to do this first by using a rasp, but then had to abandon that plan, and we ended up just switching to a drill press jig to help speed things along. After drilling more pocket holes, it was pretty easy to attach the second shelf to the case. Now that the bottom shelf isn't blocking me, I have access to screw in the pocket screws. This is much easier than trying to reach into the compartment after the fact. Now that the bottom shelves are installed, we can move on to the top shelf. You'll notice that this shelf wasn't fitting, so like the bottom shelves, we needed to trim this down to fit. After using the table saw and some help from our rasp, it ended up fitting like a glove.
it to...
Nice.
We attached the top shelf with some pocket screws, just like we did with the bottom two shelves. To make this easier, we used some Dragonite right angle clamps. These are half the price of the Craig clamps, and have a cool Pokemon name to go with it. Now that the carcass is mostly assembled, we wanted to try out the new casters and see how this case is shaping up. As you may have heard, the casters were having a tough time moving around. They were supposed to have a 290-pound rating, but our about 200-pound case was quite the challenge for them. So after ordering some new casters, we took a break from the display case and started working on a cherry tabletop. After milling down the cherry boards, we started preparing them for the glue up. Another reason the domino joiner is so helpful is because not only does it add strength to the connections, but it helps with alignment. So, we use this tool all the time. Clamping this many boards together will always be interesting, even with dominoes. You may see the board start to buckle as Henry's tightening the clamps, which is why we needed to run some other boards across it to help clamp it down flat. This is one of those moments where you always wish you had more clamps.
Not optimal, but it works.
By this point in the video, it was already Thursday, so the table was able to cure overnight. We removed the clamps and set the table aside as we continued to work more on the display case.
There we have our underside of the table.
After trimming off the top of the door, I was able to get it to fit in the door slot. The challenging part was getting it out.
Now I gotta figure out how to get this door out of there. So I'm gonna try use a little chisel.
Needs felt thing?
Snug as a bug.
Smog as a bug.
The hinges that are being used for this are SOSS invisible hinges. So I needed to make markings on the frame and the door to make sure that they match up when installed. It wasn't the easiest process though. After struggling to get the door back out, Henry grabbed some double-sided tape to try and make some holds to grab onto. The funny thing about this tape is that when we purchased it from Amazon, a reviewer gave it 1 star for not being a permanent solution. And while yes, it shouldn't be used as a permanent solution, we have found it to be extremely strong and hard to take off. We have to be careful when sticking it to plywood because it will sometimes rip off the veneer. Now that we have a way to pull the door back out, I was able to finish making the necessary markings for the hinges. You see, Thursday was a bit of a shorter day because we had some work that was needing to be done in the office. And being a 2-person business, we're in charge of every aspect of running it, so while we prefer to be in the shop, we gotta do what we gotta do.
Should be matched up pretty well.
with that guy. Now that it is Friday and I swapped out my hoodie, I went back to preparing the door for the hinges. I needed to make a jig that would allow my plunge router to move in a straight line while cutting up the slot, so that is what I did. There you go. After making the jig, Henry helped me make a weird clamp setup that would hold the door up on the workbench and hold the jig in the correct spot for me to be able to route out the slots. Probably wear a mask.
Might not be a bad idea.
I'm gonna do that.
To avoid getting dust in my lungs, and more importantly, to avoid my wife getting mad at me for getting dust in my lungs, I put on my mask and continued routing out the slots. I had made markings where the ends of the slots were, and then had to route out a deeper section in the middle of that. Luckily, this didn't take too much time, and actually, it was very satisfying when the hinges fit perfectly. To keep the door standing up on its side, we had to clamp the ends of the door like you can see in the corner of the video, and then clamp the clamps with more clamps to lock it in with the workbench. We don't have a vise in the shop yet, so this is actually a way that we have found success in previous projects. Still, it's a little scary. While I was routing out the last slot in the door, you could hear the fire alarm start to go off. This sometimes happens when we get a dust cloud forming from using tools like, I don't know, a router. And normally to prevent this, we run a fan blowing out the garage door, but it was pretty cold outside, so we're trying to keep the heat in as much as possible. Luckily, Henry was on top of it. Now that the door slots were prepped, we needed to reposition the display case onto the workbench to allow us to do that routing process again next week. It was already nearing quitting time on the last day, so we were just preparing for Monday. Thank you guys so much for tagging along with us in this video. We appreciate your support as we grow our small business. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment, a like, and subscribe to our channel. And if you happen to be a subscriber from our SketchUp tutorial video, I would like you all to know that we are in the middle of recording an updated 2025 free SketchUp tutorial, and we hope to have that out by the end of next week. Thank you for your patience. You guys are awesome.